If we think of Bitcoin in fiat currency, if we measure Bitcoin in fiat currency, Bitcoin's price will go to infinity. And so if Bitcoin's price will go to infinity, will you still want to remain public in the future? So for my personal security and for the security of my family and my future family, I prefer to not reveal myself.
오늘 영상에서는 레셔널 루트라는 인물로서 비트코인 스트래티지 플랫폼에서 메인 분석가로 활동하고 있는 비트코인 분석가의 연설을 들어볼 건데요. 레셔널 루트는 독특한 나선형 차트와 온체인 기반 고점, 저점 예측 모델을 사용하면서 높은 성공 확률의 분석을 지금까지 해내었고 현재 15만 명의 투자자들이 해당 분석 모델을 구독 중입니다. 레셔널 루트는 비트코인 4년 주기가 정확하게 진행되고 있다고 하면서 그 근거로 나선형 차트 모델을 제시하며 이를 증명하고 있습니다. 레셔널 루트는 2025년 크리스마스 비트코인의 가격이 10만 달러에서 100만 달러 사이일 것이라고 예측하고 있는데요. 최근 비트코인 잡지 컨퍼런스 2023에서 발표한 기조연설을 살펴보면 비트코인 공급 역학 모델을 분석했더니 2024년도 반감기는 역사상 처음으로 활성 공급량이 감소하는 첫 번째 경우라고 설명했습니다. 비트코인 공급량이 부족해지는 공급 쇼크가 시작되었다는 것이고 수요가 공급을 훨씬 추월하기 때문에 비트코인의 가격이 무한대로 상승할 것이라고 말하고 있는데요. 오늘 영상에서는 이러한 근거에 대해 들어보는 시간을 가지도록 하겠습니다.
And so leading up to the halving, we actually have the phase of disbelief and doubt. And so we cannot expect price to do much impressive things until the halving. But after the halving, we get this spark of hope. And so I think people will become a little more calm and optimistic and start believing once again. And then we get our next euphoria phase towards the end of 2025 if the cycle keeps moving in a similar fashion. Now, so if we look at all the bottoms here in this red circle, you can see that all the bottoms are kind of in a similar position. And as for the Bitcoin cycle peaks, which are all in a similar position. And so far, we are exactly on track in the 4-year cycle. And we are also in a phase of stagnation and choppy price behavior, which is normal for this stage of the cycle. So if we plot the circulating supply of Bitcoin, we can see that we currently have 19.5 million coins in circulation. Now, we know that there is a hard cap of 21 million coins. So the remaining 1.5 million coins will be mined over the next 100 years. Now, with each halving, the supply issuance gets cut in half. So this curve that you can see is flattening out. And so pre-halving 1, 50% of Bitcoin supply was mined. And between halving 1 and 2, it's 25% of Bitcoin supply that was mined, and another 12.5% between halving 2 and halving 3, and it keeps on going, and so it flattens out. Now let's use our metric liveliness on the circulating supply. You can see that each halving, by the way, each halving takes 210,000 blocks. So at the x-axis, you can see the years and the time in block time. Now let's plot our liveliness metric into this circulating supply. Now we can divide the supply into two categories. Now one is the active supply and the other one is the non-participating supply. Well, why is it non-participating? It's because those coins, they don't move on chain, and so many of these coins from this non-participating supply come from this 2009, 2010 era where Bitcoin didn't really have a price yet. So a lot of these coins are lost, and this also includes the million coins that belong to Satoshi, who are very unlikely to move. So this non-participating supply does not actively take part in Bitcoin's price discovery. So the active supply, on the other hand, is the supply that's responsible for Bitcoin's price discovery. So we're going to zoom in to that active supply because that non-participating supply we can kind of ignore. Now, the active supply, instead of having 19.5 million coins previously, we now are down to 12 million coins that are kind of in circulation, that are actively responsible for Bitcoin's price discovery. Now, this active supply is built up from all kinds of liquidity levels, so from very illiquid supply to very liquid supply. So we're going to try and divide this active supply further by looking at hodl behavior. Now, if we think of the hodlers of Bitcoin, we can actually divide that active supply further into the following two categories. There's actually two ways to measure hodl behavior on chain, or two main ways to measure hodl behavior on chain. And one is through time, so by looking at the age of coins. So in particular, if coins are old, they are likely to belong to these long-term holders. They belong to the group of hodlers. Another way is to look at spending behavior. So we can identify the entities that are on chain, and those entities have a spending behavior. So if an entity spends less than 25% of their holdings, they are classified as illiquid, and they are very likely a person or an entity that is a hodler. Now, so we can divide this supply further into the two categories: illiquid supply and the supply that is available for trade, that remains. Now, let's discuss a little further this illiquid supply. So for that, we're going to now plot the price information of Bitcoin, and we see those black dots in the price line. Those are the all-time highs that are being made. Now let's zoom in on those black dots, on those all-time highs when Bitcoin's price goes exponential. Because when Bitcoin's price goes exponential, there's actually the max incentive to spend coins on chain, because price just made an all-time high, and there's no other moment in time where you could have made more profit by selling. So we can actually see that those green zones that I highlighted here, they correlate with these spikes in illiquid supply. Now, actually, the group of hodlers, they in general, they only stack sats, but only during such moments of exponential price increases, they tend to sell off some of their coins. Now, why is illiquid supply jumping instead of going down during those phases? It's because during these green zones, during this hype phase of Bitcoin, a lot of new demand is coming in, and so initially that supply that is being bought up, this is classified as illiquid. So there's a lot of new entities coming into the space. They are classified as illiquid. So we see an initial spike in illiquid supply. Now, after the bull run is over and we go into a bear market, these new people that came into the space, they are very sensitive to price action, and they sell some coins, and those coins become more liquid. But during that whole phase, we can see that the trend of illiquid supply is actually a linear trend. We kind of keep on going. We move up in illiquid supply in a linear fashion, and during such a bull market, we see a short spike in illiquid supply, but then kind of fall back to that baseline of hodlers that are kind of stacking sats and make the supply illiquid. Now, all this to say that illiquid supply is actually in a linear trend, as you just saw, and the new supply issuance, which we showed before as well, is diminishing with every halving. So let's now look at this available supply for trade that's left, and we can actually see that since the third halving, the available supply for trade that remains, that is shrinking. Now, this is kind of logical, because the growth rate of illiquid supply has been outpacing new supply issuance due to the fact that illiquid supply grows in a linear fashion and the new supply issuance gets cut in half with every halving. And we're actually not far away from the next halving, which is at block 840,000. Now, why did we not see a supply shock of any sort? And there's actually three reasons for this. And the first reason is that we're still relatively high as is. We can see that the maximum available supply for trade was around that 5 million coins, and we're not far off from that to begin with. The second reason is that since 2020, and with Bitcoin being adopted as a institutional grade asset, we also got a bit of the fiat malpractices on top of Bitcoin. So if we plot the future volume that is traded on top of Bitcoin, we actually get the following graph. And so this is actually paper Bitcoin that is on top of the actual supply of Bitcoin that is being traded. And so this is the derivatives markets. I only showed the volume of futures here. And these futures are dollar denominated. So these future contracts, they don't need any underlying Bitcoin to speculate on Bitcoin's price. And so we can see that the trend here is that after the third halving, we still kept on moving up a little bit in terms of the amount of Bitcoin that was traded. But since this year, since 2023, we have been moving down nonetheless. Now, this paper Bitcoin doesn't include things like FTX, for example, where people thought that they actually bought the underlying asset, but they only had an IOU that was not backed. So that is not. So the paper Bitcoin that I show here is even kind of in a conservative way of showing this paper Bitcoin. Now, the last reason why I think we haven't really seen a supply shock is because supply only gets tested really once every cycle, where we have a phase of true hype in the market. And so we had that in 2021, and we saw those exponential price increases. It was still a bit of a disappointing cycle, and we just explained a bit why, because the available supply for trade seems to be very high, and there was paper Bitcoin trading on top of Bitcoin during that cycle. But we're moving back down, and that's a positive thing. Now, when the next hype phase that Bitcoin will undergo is probably in the next cycle after the fourth halving, and that will really be a true test for this decreasing supply again. So I wonder what we will see there. Now, the next question then becomes, when can we expect a new hype phase in Bitcoin? And for that, we're going to have to look at the psychology of the market cycle. And you might all know this graph. This is the Wall Street cheat sheet. It covers all the phases that one goes through in a market cycle. And we can see that the price is color-coded as well. So there's these green colors for euphoria and these red colors for capitulation or depression. And so we're going to apply this chart to Bitcoin. And so we're going to think about what is the best way to apply this chart to Bitcoin, and what is the best way to apply these different phases to the Bitcoin market cycle. And so that's the next topic that we will discuss. And now we're going to use this color-coded price in the following chart, because Bitcoin moves in a 4-year cycle. And what chart is better than a circular chart to show Bitcoin's cycle? So each rotation in this circular chart is a time period of 4 years, because Bitcoin moves in a 4-year period. And so we start in the top at 2009, we move to 2010, 11, 12, 13, and we keep on going all the way to today. And the price info on this chart is actually shown by each ring in this chart. So we start at a cent in the very center, and then we move with a 10-fold increase every ring, from $1 to $10 to $100, and the most outer ring is $10 million. Now, let's plot our price info. So we start at January 3rd, 2009, when Bitcoin launched at the Genesis block, and we're gonna plot the Bitcoin's price into this chart. And you can see no price info yet, because in 2009 Bitcoin didn't have a price yet. We're in the first cycle now, and it was actually not until the late 2010, here you can see Bitcoin's price start moving from the center, and we immediately jump above that $10, after which we have a severe drop, and we make a bottom for that cycle. We're now already in the year 2012, and we get there. That blue dot that that's just shown is the halving, which causes this supply shock, and it causes an increase in price. Now we are in the year 2014 already. We had a peak at the end of 2013, and we make a bottom now there at the beginning of 2015. And so we keep on rotating, and we now see actually some more neutral price action, and we now have a next halving there, that blue dot again, and we move into the third cycle now. We are in the year 2017, and we make a peak at the end of 2017 there. Now, let's pause the chart for a second, and we can actually see that we have two peaks around that same area at the end of the year every 4 years. And so we could identify this as the euphoria phase. So here we see the euphoria phase that we added, and if this is the euphoria phase, then we can also actually start identifying the other phases. And so after euphoria actually comes complacency, where people think that we just need to cool off a little bit. And so let's start adding in these other phases. So we can actually now see that we move to complacency, to denial, and people start then panicking. Why is everyone selling? And then we move into the capitulation phase, where people cannot afford any more losses and they capitulate, and we make a bottom at that phase. And then we move into the depression, where people become a bit angry, and then we move into stagnation. So the price is kind of going sideways, we're stagnating. We get the disbelief phase, where people start also doubting soon after, and then there's actually some hope because the halving happens, and we move into the next phase where people become a little more calm because the price went up a little bit, and they become more optimistic, and then they really start believing again in Bitcoin, and they really think like it's time to invest. And then we get a small intermission, which is followed by thrill, where everyone thinks, I got to tell everyone to buy, this is amazing. And then we feel like a genius, and we make a cycle peak at 69K there, and we move back into complacency, and it starts all over, denial, and we move again back into the panic. Why is everyone selling? And where we felt like a genius in the euphoria phase, we now feel like an idiot at the depression phase. And we move back again, we have to endure, and we move again into that stagnation phase, where price kind of is choppy and sideways. And we're actually now in the end, kind of at the end of that stagnation phase. We're kind of moving into that disbelief phase, which is followed by a phase of doubt. And then the next halving will actually be at this blue line that you can see here. So the halving moves back a bit with every cycle, because the halving is just slightly less than 4 years. So that's why these blue dots are kind of moving backwards with every cycle. Now the next halving is less than 6 months away, and so leading up to the halving, we actually have the phase of disbelief and doubt. And so we cannot expect price to do much impressive things until the halving. But after the halving, we get this spark of hope. And so I think people will become a little more calm and optimistic and start believing once again. And then we get our next euphoria phase towards the end of 2025, if the cycle keeps moving in a similar fashion. Now, so if we look at all the bottoms here in this red circle, you can see that all the bottoms are kind of in a similar position. And as for the Bitcoin cycle peaks, which are all in a similar position. And so far, we are exactly on track in the 4-year cycle. And we are also in a phase of stagnation and choppy price behavior, which is normal for this stage of the cycle. So we will see if the next euphoria phase will do something to the limited supply that is available for Bitcoin. And I want to mention one note of cautious, to be a little cautious about the current macro environment, because we are in insane times in the world. I think the world is more volatile than it has been in the last 10 years of Bitcoin's existence. And so the macroeconomic landscape is a bit crazy at the moment. And so we will have to look at all the indicators if we keep on track in the 4-year cycle. But so far, there is no deviation yet, and we're actually exactly on track in that 4-year cycle.